Okay, and I will start the event.
Hi everybody, welcome. We're just going to give others a couple more minutes to join, and then we'll start with introducing you to the rise of the monster methods. Welcome, those that have just joined. We're just giving everybody one more minute to join, and then we'll start. Okay, welcome everybody. I think we are good to begin the talk today. Thank you all for joining, and welcome to the International Congress on Project Management and Engineering for 2021. And we are here again virtually, and today we're going to talk about the rise of the monster methods. So I'm going to do some introductions first, and those of you that have used Zoom before, just pop your questions in the chat or any comments. If you haven't used Zoom before, in your bar you should have a Q&A button. If you open that, you'll be able to see the chat from your fellow delegates. So a little bit about me first. Hello, my name's Emma Ruth ARNAZ-PEMBERTON. I'm the Director of Consulting Services at a company called Wellington. We have offices in the UK, where I am also in Madrid and in Ireland. I am very close to all the associations. I work very closely with AEIPRO, IPMA, with PMI, and with the APM here in the UK. For Wellington, I also organise our Future PMO conference, which is a one-day conference for PMO and project management professionals who can get together to learn, share and grow in a fun and interesting environment. And you can follow me on social media. If you just search for PMO Ninjas, you'll be able to find me on most of the social media networks. A little bit about Wellington. We are a project portfolio and work management consultancy firm. Our mission is to enable our clients to make a change, a step change in their maturity when it comes to project management. And we do that through a number of different vehicles, which include technology, consultancy, training. We have partners around the world, namely in Costa Rica, that help us to do this. We do events like Future PMO, as well as annual research. So we like to get involved all around the industry, all around the globe. Today, we're going to talk about or explore some of the challenges that are facing the industry right now, that remote working is the standard, is very quickly becoming the standard. So we're going to cover the different trends that are emerging, provide some insights into how practitioners can relate each one to their new reality, as well as explaining how we can adapt quickly enough to effectively support our organizations in this changing world. And we're going to start just reflecting a little bit about the year we've just had. Yes, it's been chaotic. Yes, it's been volatile. And it's really for project management professionals, now is the time to find some calm in the chaos and really find something that we can help our organizations to kind of come out of the pandemic with a bright future. And that's hopefully some tips that I will give you today. So we are going to explore the challenges, look at those emerging trends. I'm going to give you some practical things that you can do to bring in some logic to that chaos. And also, I'll give you a perspective on governance, enabling functions, and the PMO. As you can tell from my social media, PMO Ninjas, I am a PMO specialist by trade. And so I always have to put that directly into every presentation that I do. So let's have a look at some of the monster challenges that we're dealing with right now. So given the change in the work economy, we can see, and we've heard from lots of different sources, this is from Reich, telling us that actually 75% of people would now consider a change to a more flexible working in the future. Most of us don't want to go back to the old normal, where we were traveling lots and going into the office every day. Actually, one of the things that we've found is that we really value our balance of work and life. Also, the same amount of people just about say that their mental well-being is a lot better now as well. So although it has been a struggle for many, and we need to acknowledge and be very mindful of that when we are starting to go back to work in a more kind of face-to-face way, we do need to think about the people that have had it rough. But at the same time, most people say that that balance has given their mental well-being a little bit of a chance to relax and to not feel some of the pressures that we would have felt before. Not least because of the commute, where most of us now no longer commute. So the one that we always said we wanted, I need more time, we got that time. What we've used it for is still debatable, but we do have more time. And also, the other thing to consider is the amount of time that we spend being focused. So we can see in the middle graph here, before coronavirus, we would spend about just over an hour talking to people in the office about non-work related topics. That's come down a lot more. So now the average is around 10 minutes. So we spend a lot more time focused on the role. So that are some challenges to that as well. So first of all, the structure. For project management, one of the core challenges of working remotely is how do we deliver remote governance? So we all know that governance and assurance are really important. We have our stage gates, we have our health checks and lots of other touch points. And it's actually, many people have found it harder to deliver effective governance over a virtual setting. The reasons for that there are various. One is around the availability of people, with people having to suddenly be off. People may be working unusual hours because they've also had their children at home and lots of other things going on. But also because we're so used to looking at the other person and kind of seeing how they're doing and asking how they're doing. It's very different on a camera. It's very different to really get to grips and to really feel like we're comfortable with challenging somebody to say, are you sure? Can you prove that to me that we've done that piece of work? So the structure around project management and how we manage activity has been a little bit of a challenge for some, not all organizations. Also, connectivity. Yes, we are now overly connected, it's fair to say. We are all talking on various different technology platforms, talking to various different groups. We've seen a massive growth in social networks and people creating groups that they are engaged with. So we are over connected, if you like, from a digital sense. But the thing to remember, and it kind of reminds us of that element around the mental well-being of our people, is that on a human level, we're actually very disconnected. So although it's great that we can do all of our work remotely, what we are missing is that human interaction in many cases. And we can see that with the amount of time that we now spend talking about non-work related activities. It's very, very small. So we do need to still find a balance between that being humans first and project and program practitioners second. Another challenge has been organizations have had to give a lot more flexibility to their people. For me personally, this has been a real positive for organizations where historically we would have had to be in the office for 8:30 till 6:30, or you get 1 hour for break for lunch or whatever it might be. Whereas actually organizations now have to trust their people a lot more. They have to trust that if they work very early and finish early, that the work is being done. They have to trust that people start later and work later, or maybe they have a situation at home, so they have to stop working halfway through the day. They've had to trust their people more. And that is a real challenge for traditional organizations from a human resources perspective, as you can imagine. Technology has also been a challenge. There has been an influx of technology, both in our organizations as well as outside. We saw this very, very quickly during the first kind of wave of the pandemic, where we all suddenly learned about Zoom, and we all learned about all sorts of different ways of communicating with people. And as a result of that, we are seeing technology fatigue, where people are exhausted of having to figure out what's the right tool that I should be talking to people with. And if you're anything like me, you probably have 4 or 5 different ways or different applications downloaded on your computer. And then the last one is around learning. So again, one of the real positives is that people have taken that extra time, and they have, in many cases, put it into learning opportunities. So we've seen a 400% uptake in online learning since the pandemic started, which is great. There is a challenge with that. The net result of that is that we now have lots of experts who we see now on LinkedIn. So we see lots of people who have been on a course and then they deem themselves an expert. And I know, you know, as project professionals, that a course doesn't make you a project manager. Experience makes you a project manager. So we need to be mindful, as we are looking for training partners and training providers, that we are able to give our people the learning through the experience, not just the learning through how to pass the exam, which is one of the things that is starting to appear at the moment, where people, they have lots of courses, they have lots of badges, but very little experience. So we do need to be mindful of that, both as team members and team leaders. So remote working is brought good, it's brought a little bit of bad. And amongst all of that brand new change that we've had to deal with, we also have to deal with the methodologies. So the method monsters are growing in the sense of, we have lots of different ways of working now. Some monsters are bigger than others. Some people prefer some monsters to others. So we're going to just take a stroll through some of the existing and emerging things that we are seeing. So first of all, waterfall, cascading projects, very sequential, kind of really looking for business processy type work that is very predictable. Probably I would say waterfall is the most traditional way of running a project, and still the most common in many areas. Agile, we are seeing Agile continue to grow, and the importance of iterative work for things like software and digital development, that is continuing to grow, as lots of our waterfall traditional projects have an element of IT within them. So we are needing to bring in more of that Agile piece every time. And as we've gone into remote working, that's grown exponentially as well. Then we have hybrid, which is, I think, is becoming quite common, where we're using a bit of a mixture of that waterfall as well as that Agile, and that's helping us to deal with the fact that most of our projects have an element of digital within them. So really being able to blend both of those methods together to get us the best results, the best possible results. In some organizations, we still see Lean and Six Sigma, or Lean Six Sigma, which is really all about waste reduction. It's about making sure that we are not spending time, money, effort where we shouldn't be, which is really specific in some organizations such as manufacturing and logistics. And we can see also critical path, which is all about systems thinking, making sure that we're really looking after the interdependencies between the work that's going on. So we can see if something happens with this project A, project B, C, and D are going to be affected. So really looking and focusing on some of the dependencies that exist within the work that we are doing. And these probably you've all heard of before. They are existing kind of trends. And some of the monsters that are coming along are things like project management bricolage. Bricolage is more about improvisation. And the idea is that it's skills based. So you don't just put a plan together, you bring the people who have the right skills to do a particular element. So where we might want to start a project in a waterfall way because we want to justify our business case, we might then bring in some Lean Six Sigma people to do some process re-engineering. We then will pass some piece of work to the Agile team. We might do some change management, and then we might go back to waterfall. So project management bricolage really encourages people to work together who have different skill sets. So rather than the project manager having to own everything and kind of try and muddle through, making sure that we're putting the right people with the right skills for the right job into the right projects. And we build our plan around that. Personally, I feel this is the future of us being able to have that conversation around what skill is going to best serve this particular part of the project and bringing the right person in for that job. So bricolage is something that is emerging. We are seeing more and more organizations interested in it. A bit like Agile, you can't just decide tomorrow that you're going to be a bricolage organization. Really, it's not about changing the light switch. It's really about changing the mindset. And the first thing you need to know is, what skills do you have in your business? Most organizations have some people, have some change managers who are maybe not using those skills anymore, not because they're not useful, but because they're not the fashion right now. So understanding who you have in your organization is the first step of becoming a bricolage project focused organization. Next, we have artificial intelligence. So we know artificial intelligence is coming. There's lots and lots of reading about it. There's different keynote speakers and presentations on this kind of talk. So we know it's coming. AI is all about having data that's experience-based. That's how we learn. That's how it's really about making sure we're scheduling the right things, using experience to back up our assumptions. So making sure that the monster of AI is bringing something positive. It is bringing something that our organizations can use, because it can be quite daunting and scary as a prospect that, you know, oh, artificial intelligence, what does that mean? Are the robots taking over? So really making sure that we're bringing the right artificial intelligence into our project practice is going to be a really important step moving forward. Next, we have serious play. Serious play, one of our favorites at Wellington, in the sense of we work hard and we play hard. So serious play is all about having the right team facilitating the different planning sessions and encouraging creative thinking, encouraging communication, collaboration, and thinking outside of the project box, not necessarily doing things how you would normally do them. So one example, we have just piloted a course that has been run in an agile fashion. So we haven't just delivered training, we've actually asked the team, the delegates that we are training, to tell us what they want to learn, to prioritize that. And then we've run that course as a set of sprints, not because we're trying to make things hard for ourselves, but because that's how we experience things through play. So in my world, training is something that we do need to think differently about. It isn't just about the theory anymore. So serious play, you will have also seen Lego serious play, where we do lots of planning and creative thinking using Lego blocks. So there's lots of different ways out there to start doing things differently. Next, we have the hashtag no projects, hashtag no estimates movements that are slowly starting to take hold. No projects meaning that we shouldn't have any projects. Everything should just be changed as part of business as usual. And no estimates, where we don't try to estimate. Estimating in research is shown to be one of the poorest skills that organizations have at that kind of maturity, when we look at it from a maturity perspective. So the no estimates movement is really looking to what happens, really looking at thinking about change in a very different way to what we're used to. So get ready to start seeing some more stuff, some more writing and white papers on this. And then lastly, the Management 3.0 movement is all about systems thinking. So kind of taking everything we know and considering it as a living, breathing system. So everything impacts everything else, and really making sure that we are thinking about everything in a systematic and logical way before we kind of, take any leap of faith. So there are lots of emerging trends. And so we know now that project professionals and PMO professionals are struggling with, well, we've always been this waterfall organization or this agile organization. So if there's lots of other methods and loads of other ways of looking at change coming, how can we possibly adapt to all of this? Do we have to pick one? Can we pick several? And how is that going to work? Now, everybody wants to be first. Everybody wants to be, we were the first organization that kind of did a big case study and won an award for becoming a bricolage organization, for example. What we need to do, though, is consider when we are trying to pick our monster, when we're trying to find our monster method, the way that we are going to manage all of our activity, when we're going out there hunting, that we consider some things. First of all, lots of new stuff remains in what we would call a beta state for quite some time. It's very unusual for an organization to choose to be an early adopter of a brand new way of working or a brand new system. Why? Because if we sign up to something that isn't proven, it brings risk. It exposes us to a situation that we may not be able to handle, or we may have to backtrack from. So having some of these methods as emerging means they are relatively new, maybe not in their existence, but in the way that they're being brought into or accepted into the project management industry. So making sure that we are picking the right monster, we're hunting and selecting our prey, if you like, from a monster's perspective, making sure we pick at the right point is really important. If we live and work in an immature organization, bringing in a beta state new way of working might be the perfect thing. It might be the exact thing that you need, but it could also cause a lot of chaos. The next is transformation. Organizations are already focused. They're already focused on what on earth does the future. They're already focused on how have we had to change over the last 14 months, and what does that mean for the future direction of where we are. So again, understanding when to hunt for your next big methodology is a really important point. Most organizations have already changed. They have already put focus in, this is the direction that we're going in the future. Many organizations have done that through maturity assessments. They've taken a step back to understand what are we good at, what are we less good at, so that they can add that level of focus for the future. So picking the moment is really important. And remembering that every time we add a new way of working, we're adding layers to our project management practice. We're probably not just going to get rid of our original way or original ways of working. So we're adding layers. As we add layers, we add complexity. And if you look at how you work through the eyes of somebody that might be new to your organization, we need to consider if they can follow that, if they can pick that up and kind of run with it as a project professional, or if they're going to get very confused very quickly. So as we add layers, we need to focus on which was our original monster that we quite liked, which one are we adding in, and how do we get them to play well together? We don't want them to fight, we don't want them to be at odds with each other. So how do we get them to play together? And that comes down to adding the new ways of working whilst refining the existing ways, so that we know we're not duplicating effort and that we're doing that blending in the right way. Also, we need to consider the element of scanning. Keeping up with the neighbours is something we all want to do. Keeping up with our competitors, keeping up with other organisations in our industry, keeping up with other organisations. It's a great thing to feel like we're ahead of the curve. However, keeping up with the neighbours is a full-time job. The project management industry is changing all the time. There's new things coming, there's new things being thrown out there to see if it sticks somewhere, anywhere. And it can be a full-time job just trying to keep up with that. And again, the more we try to keep up, we change to keep up, the more risk we are exposed to as an organization. Most organizations have a risk threshold. There's only so much risk they're willing and able to accept. And that might be one of the reasons why we say, not right now. Also, we need to consider the human element, the human condition. If we're adding new things, we need to teach people. We can't just add new methodologies, new ways of working. We can't add new monsters to the page without telling everybody else what's going on. So usually for most organizations, a new way of working equals some kind of training or a workshop or some kind of familiarization. Taking people out of the day job is expensive. And many organizations struggle to take people out for 3 or 4 or 5 days or however many hours we need them to upskill in something else. Especially when we consider how much change we've already gone through. So again, the human condition, we need breathing space. We have to remember that we are human first and PPM practitioners second. So making sure that we're not layering lots and lots of new stuff to the people who are already busy. They might already be stressed. They might already be juggling work and home and lots of other things going on. So really making sure that we are doing things at the right time for our organization, but also that we're doing things at the right time for our people is really important. And if you follow me on social media, lots of my posts you'll see have the hashtag human first on them, because I do genuinely believe that we need to focus on the people before we focus on the process and the technology, because it's the people that are going to drive the process and the technology. It's the people that are going to say, thank you, but no, I'm quite happy doing what I'm doing. And we shouldn't underestimate the power of a user of a process or a system that doesn't want to get involved, that doesn't want to work in that way. So some key considerations for you to think about when looking to take on a new monster, a new methodology, a new something that you want to play with. And remembering that if we do bring things in, it can be fun at first, you know, it can be new, it can be little, but it grows very quickly into maybe a monster that organizationally we're not sure that we can handle. So that's kind of looking at the existing trends and ways of working, looking at some of the emerging trends that you might be interested in learning more about, but also putting that reality check in place for you. Is this the right time? Can my organization take the risk of doing things in a new way all of a sudden? Can my people take what comes with having to work in a new way all of a sudden? So hopefully this is all making sense. Remember that you can pop any questions or any comments box, and we will continue, and I'll deal with any of those towards the end of the session. So we've selected our monsters, we know what we like, we know what we want, we've brought them into play. What are the practical things that you can do to make sure that you're picking the right monster, you know how to treat it, and you know that now is the right time to introduce it into the environment? So first of all, understanding the order of things is really important. It's really easy, and as humans we love the idea of being first, so quite often we'll take a leap of faith, and we'll take that leap because we think, well, this will be a good adventure. And I'm very much that way personally. So we need to really understand from our organization perspective and our people perspective if we're ready to start doing this kind of work. So first of all, open the conversation. You can't do this on your own unless you're a company of 1 or maybe 2. You can't decide this is how the direction the organization is going in. If you're a PPM professional or a PMO or any other enabling function, whether it's audit and assurance or wherever you currently sit, open the conversation with the people in first your office and then your leadership team. Do any of these interest us? Because maybe it's good for the nature of the work that we do. Maybe it would work because of the challenges that we're getting from our customers. But start having that conversation so that you can understand, what do the people want in your organization? What does the organization need for it to move forward? Then we need to start doing some project accounting. That doesn't mean we're going to do all the financials for the project. What that means is understanding, once we've started that conversation, let's actually see what we have. Many organizations ask me all the time, you need to come and make us agile. Okay, are you a software development company? No. Okay, so we do some project accounting. We understand how many projects do we have running at the moment? What is the nature of the project? What is the state of the projects? Are they live? Are they on hold? Are they still the right thing to do strategically? Only by doing that project accounting can we then have what we would say a grown-up conversation with those people to say, most of the projects that you have in flight, you're building things, maybe a bridge, maybe a house, maybe an office block, whatever it might be. And agile, like all the other methodologies that I've spoken about, they work for certain things. They're not so great for other things. So the conversation quite often turns to, I get why you want this, but actually the nature of the work that you do, it doesn't warrant that much of a cultural and mindset shift in the organization. So agile is a really good example. And I've talked about this many times, as have some of my colleagues. What we end up with is agility. Agile, agility are two different things. So actually what these companies are asking for is some agility in the way that they manage their projects, their programs, their change. Usually what that means is we end up bringing some agile practice into a non-agile environment. And that's okay. You don't have to pick one or the other with any of these methodologies. You can look at a project and decide, what does this need to be successful? Like I explained during project management bricolage. What do we need for this to be successful? And let's take the bits that are good from all of the different methods, if we can, to bring our projects to a success. We can only do that by understanding our project accounting. Firstly, do we know what a project is in our organization? How do we define it? Do we run everything as a project, or do we run everything as business as usual? And then we call it a project when it gets complicated. Then we need to understand, okay, now we know that, what do we actually have in our portfolio and in our pipeline for the future? What's the nature of those activities? Does it lend itself to what you're trying to achieve? Very often we blindly go for the monster that's the most attractive to us, but it's not always the right thing. And the reality is that best practice is best practice for a reason. It works. It's been tested, tried many times over usually. So there are good bits in all the different methodologies. It's about picking the right bits that are going to work in your reality. So project accounting is a really important step that quite often gets missed when we want to change the way we do things. Next, we need to communicate. And I'm a firm believer that you can't half communicate. You either communicate or you don't communicate, but you shouldn't half do it. You may as well just not do it. So we need to make sure that we're telling people what is happening, even if we haven't decided on our monster, even if we haven't picked one yet. We need to let people know that this is something that's being considered, that we are to potentially enhance, not necessarily change, the way that we manage change today. So making sure that we have a communication plan in place so that we can talk to the organization, maybe not directly, maybe indirectly through newsletters, intranets, through Teams, or whatever vehicles we have, to let them know that these conversations are ongoing. Then we need to think about feedback. So the same with that communication. It's that kind of, what do you think? Do you own all the good ideas in your organization? I don't think you do. So actually going out and asking, what do you want? What do you need? Is a really, really valid way of bringing everybody else on your journey. If you do it by yourself and you try and bring a brand new monster into the pen, what will happen is people will resist. They won't play, they won't want to get involved. But if you bring people on the same journey by communicating, by giving them the ability to feedback, even if we don't action their feedback, as long as people feel like they're part of it, then they're more likely to accept it. One of my colleagues always says, no one destroys what one helps to build. And I think that's really important. If it's being done to me, I'm more likely to resist. Why? Because as humans, we naturally are afraid of change. It's a natural state. It's not something that is trained necessarily. But when people say, I want you to change something about the way you work, we automatically go to a place of, you're going to take something away from me, whether that's access, autonomy, freedom of movement within our organization, whatever it is, people will naturally go to that place. The only way to really alleviate that, to make them feel better, is to get them involved and ask their opinion and talk to them about the why. Then they're more likely to play ball. And then once you've opened the conversation and you understand what kind of work you are dealing with, and you've spoken to the end users, the customers of whatever the new ways of working are going to be, we always recommend that you do a maturity assessment. This sounds like an unnecessary piece of work. One of my old bosses would have said it was soft and fluffy nonsense. But for us, it's actually really important, because how can you know where you're going if you don't know where you've been? So for us, understanding the starting position, that's the only way you can really have a good discussion about where you want to get to and where you realistically think you can. That's the only way you can realistically build a roadmap. If you don't understand your starting position, you might be asking for 100%, but it might be completely unattainable. If none of your projects have business cases right now, if we don't know that, we just know through a gut feel and experience, we can't then put an argument forward to say, well, we don't want to target 100% of our projects with business cases in the next few months, because that's a huge leap. And a lot of the time we'd be setting ourselves up to fail. We might, in a few months, be happy with 30% of our projects having business cases. That might be good enough for the time being. So really understanding what your starting position is will help you to define where you can and want to get to. And in the maturity journey, it isn't always about getting to 5 out of 5. Sometimes many organizations would be happy with a 4 or a 3.5, whatever it might be. As a result of the importance of maturity, this is something that at Wellington we're really passionate about understanding the whole journey. And actually, before we do any work with our customers, whether it's consulting, whether it's technology, we always do a maturity benchmark for them. Because then in a year, once we've done some of our work with them, we can do it again, we can assess them again, and we can show them a step change. Our mission is to enable that step change in maturity. That's one of the tools that we use to demonstrate to our clients that what they're doing is adding value. One of the core reasons why PMOs get disbanded is because people don't see the value. A lot of that is because we don't benchmark. We don't have anything. We know we've been successful. Deep down we know, but we can't prove it. And if we can't prove it, then where's the value for everybody else? So really making sure that we're taking all of these steps before we decide to change the way of working is going to be a critical point of you deciding what your next methodology monster is going to be. Moving on, defining the approach. So there's some practical steps that you can take straight away in the previous slide. In this slide, it's really about understanding the balance between experience and innovation. Very few companies can focus 100% on innovation. Very few companies can focus 100% on experience. We need to find the balance that works within our organization. And at Wellington, we talk about organizations having their own project management DNA. Every organization is different, even organizations in the same industry. If we were all to have our cameras on now, you would see that we are all very different, and yet we are 99.something% alike. That -1% makes a massive difference, and our organizations are the same, and we should be respectful of that. And that DNA is why many times when people bring a way of working, they get a new job, they bring their way of working from their previous business and they apply it, it doesn't work. And quite often it doesn't work because of the DNA of the organization. So we have to understand the old versus the new. The old ways, don't underestimate the power of them. If they've been around, chances are they've worked for a while, even if they're not how you would make them, how you would have them. People know how to use them probably. People know how to access. People know how to get help. People know how it all works. So don't underestimate the power of the old. Next, we need to gather intelligence. If you're going to try to change something, understand what works, what doesn't work. When we do maturity assessments before we start building roadmaps, we always ask two questions. If you had a magic wand, what would you change? What's the one thing you would change? And the other question is, what should we not touch? What works that you think, don't touch that, that's a key part of who we are as a team, as an organization. So gather intelligence on how well things get used at the moment. And like it says here, identify what works well. There will be stuff that works well. And it's always fascinating when I ask those two questions, because I always ask, what would you change? What are the challenge? What's the biggest challenge? And that comes really easily. But when I ask the question, okay, tell me what works well, what are you happy with? That's a really hard answer for many people, because we focus on the negative so much that we forget to think about the positive sometimes and the things that do actually work. So finding opportunities for us to improve, again, is a clear way of understanding something about the experience of the organization. Next, we need to know our projects, project accounting, understand what there is, what there isn't, what the balance of our portfolio is. Is it aligned to our strategy? Are people just doing what the heck they want? And really important question to ask people is, what keeps you up at night when you think about the projects that you have going on right now? People love to talk about what's painful. They love to talk about the negative experience. So understanding where people are feeling pain is a really good way of getting to the root cause of any problems there might be. And remember, when we're focusing and looking at, okay, the old ways, just because, and I'm going to say this again, just because you would do it differently doesn't mean you have to throw it out. So when considering new ways, we have to understand that reality. The reality right now for many organizations is that we are preserving cash flow, or we are in a situation where we have less people than we did a year and 2 months ago, 3 months ago. So understand the reality of the business as well as the people within the business. In many organizations, people have been sent home. They haven't worked for a long time in the same way that they were before. So understanding that reality, is now the right time to start changing the old ways when people are just starting to come back into work? Maybe not. Or maybe it's a perfect time, because actually it's a great time to go, right, guys, this year has been challenging, so let's do something about it. Let's use this as a trigger to make things different. Also, acknowledge the strengths as well as the weaknesses. Like I said, most of us, we tend to focus on the negative, the weaknesses. It's very easy to come up with a list of things that our organization, our teams, our delivery teams don't do well. But at the same time, let's switch that around and focus on, what are we strong? Where are we strong? What makes us unique as a team? Do we have a really interesting mix of skills or experience within the team? Do we have completely brand new, straight out of university team? It's also a great situation. So really understanding our strengths as well as the weaknesses, and not getting rid of the experience that people have, whether you agree with it or not. If they feel like that past project was a negative experience, that's how they feel. There's nothing you can do about that. What you can do, though, is acknowledge that and understand that when we want to change something, people will say, yeah, but we tried that a few years ago and it didn't work. The yeah, but monster is a great monster that we want to get rid of as soon as we can. Yeah, but we did that and it didn't work. Yeah, but we don't have the time. Yeah, but we don't have the resources. We want to get rid of that yeah, but monster. And I've talked about maturity a little bit already, but know about maturity, understand the maturity question. Make sure you look at, is this something that you want to try to achieve? And if you're really true to yourself, how can you decide what you want to achieve if you don't know where you've been? Be pragmatic as well when it comes to new ways of working. Like I said, it's not about picking one monster over another. It's about taking the best bits and creating your own. Making sure that we are pragmatic. If we've managed to last this year and a bit without every governance touch point, without every assurance touch point, because of the situation we found ourselves in, maybe we don't need them all. Maybe now is a good time to be pragmatic and say, actually, if we survive with without those three things, maybe we should only bring them back if we absolutely need to. So for very complex or politically important projects, for example. So be pragmatic. Don't just automatically go back to what you were doing before. And one of the quickest ways to win over some people who might be resisting what you're trying to do is to remove their pain. Go back to the old ways. What are the pain points? What keeps you up at night? What stops you sleeping? Remove that pain. What you'll find is a lot of the pain that people are feeling, a lot of it's just stuff that you would normally do yourself, like breathing. So making sure that we find a way to remove some of that pain, that will be taken as a very personal, you took that pain away from me. So people then are more likely to work with you, to be more open-minded with what you're trying to achieve when you're picking your next methodology monster. And be creative. Don't just use the corporate grey for everything. Maybe try and do things a little bit differently. Again, at Wellington, we embrace this fully. Our conferences are insane fun. We have lots of props and things that you can enjoy throughout the day. So you have fun as well as a really serious opportunity for learning. Be creative in the way that you develop any tools or any processes. In one organization, I aligned our project types to animals. So we had a zoo of projects. So the nature of our projects were monkeys and horses and whales and elephants. That sounds really silly, but it captures people's imagination. So don't be scared to be a little bit brave and just do things a little bit outside of the corporate grey. Just color outside the lines a tiny bit and see the impact of people saying, oh, that's a little bit different. I want to know more about that. People are naturally curious. So if your stuff looks a little bit different, they will naturally try to find out more. So when you do start to define your approach, don't dismiss the old ways, the old experiences. They're really important to inform your innovation, your new world. And had this slide in there. Because we're working remotely, we shouldn't stop governance and assurance. That has been an excuse that I've heard on a number of occasions. Well, it's really hard to do remotely, so we just haven't done it. Now, I'm all for being pragmatic and saying, well, we have survived without quite so many touch points, without quite so much governance, so let's build around that. But from a PMO perspective, your job is to assure the leadership that things are being done in the right way and for the right reason. So make sure that you get to grips with the PMO, the enabling projects to deliver. So know the technology. Don't use the technology because it's on the surface. Actually get to know the technology, especially because the technology we use changes all the time. There's a brilliant new feature in Microsoft Teams where it superimposes you over the top of the presentation, which a lot of people still don't know about. And it's a great way to be able to share your content, but also people to see your face without having to switch around screens. So the technology is changing constantly at the moment. So get to know your technology. Don't just get to know with the 3 buttons that you can see. Also, when it comes to technology, don't assume that everybody else does know your technology. I still deal with people who still don't know how to use Zoom, who still don't know how to use Teams, even though we've been using it, or Google Meet. We've been using it for a year. because we've never given them the support, the training, the insight into this is how you use this. This is what this is best for. Also use videos. I think videos are great. It's very hard as a trainer, for example, to train with no faces on the screen. So use videos. Make sure that your camera is on for your meetings. It's much more respectful, and people don't then assume that you're there and you've actually gone off to make a cup of coffee. And make sure that you're using them in the right way as well. So I have my background on, etc., etc. Make sure that you are using them in the right way, that you are cognizant of, you know, bright lights shining through. And I will say, because I work in the UK and in Spain and in the US, in Spain and Latin America, you all win for having your cameras on. It's really refreshing that you don't have to ask people in Spain. It's great when we're doing things like training and workshops. Next, think of new ways of doing things, especially in this remote world. Let's think about things differently. So maybe we do some surveys or some quizzes that people can just engage with on our intranet or whatever technology you guys are using. Design new ways of communicating. Do some things that are fun as well as some things that are serious when it comes to engaging people in the PMO journey. And most PMOs have become very tactical over the last year, very much about gathering data, doing reporting, but make sure you start now to put the focus back on support, on supporting people who are delivering projects. We have some PMOs that haven't spoken to any of the delivery teams for months at a time. So make sure that you start putting the focus back on support through community events that you might do, or learning opportunities that you might give people through surveys and quizzes, so that we start to get that community back up and running. If you have, and give people the ability to collaborate on improvements. People do have more time now because they're not spending 3 hours in the car every day or on trains or planes. So give people the opportunity to collaborate. Remember that we've seen a 400% uptake in online learning this last year and a bit. So people have gone out and actively learned about topics they might never have learned about before. They might never have had the time, inclination. So what you now have around your PMO as well as within are people with lots of additional skills that they didn't have last time you all sat in an office together. So give people an opportunity to collaborate. That's going to give people the experience to learn how to be a project manager or whatever else they've tried to do. But make sure that you give people the chance to collaborate, and that's how you're going to get people to engage. And that's the end of the content for me, and really just remembering the fact that order in chaos. It's been a chaotic year. This is a really good chance for us to, as project professionals, to look at what's coming, look at what's out there, and really think about how do we bring order to that? How do we bring logic? And one of the things that I always think about PMOs is that that's what we kind of do. We kind of bring order to chaos. That we're more comfortable in chaos than we are in any other place. So, you know, lean on your PMOs if you have one, because they thrive in this kind of environment of having to think about new things and bringing things to light. As always, keep in touch with me. You can contact me directly. You can follow me on social media. You can check us out on LinkedIn, on our Future PMO website or Wellington website. And whilst I'm going to leave that there, I'm going to go and see if there are any questions that we have on the panel while we've got a few minutes left. We'd have just the one for now. So how do we know if we are ready to adopt a new monster? Well, sometimes it's just a gut feel. No, I'm kidding. In terms of adopting a new monster, something will trigger a desire to need something else. So in one of my organizations that I used to work in, we started with 0 project management. That was our starting position. So we put in a simple methodology, waterfall based, that had 5 stages, 5 documents, and that was it. There was not lots of governance, no bureaucracy. It was a very simple way of getting people to understand the concept. And then at one point, something happened And it made sense. It didn't make sense to run it in that way. And people complained about it. They said, oh, I can't believe we had to go through all these 5 stages for this piece of work. It's ridiculous. And we used that as a trigger to say, okay, now we're ready. Now that people understand the concept of project management, and they also understand when it shouldn't be used, now we're ready to bring in another layer. So that's when we added the layers. We added the layers so that people could choose the type of project, or well, not choose, but answer the type of project they were running and apply specific ways of working to the nature of that activity. But something usually will trigger. It will be a conversation, maybe with a senior leader that says, I don't understand why we do this way. Or maybe it could be as simple as we've had an audit and we've found a gap. So there's usually something, a trigger that says we need to think about this differently. We're ready to start having a different kind of conversation. Then you know you're ready to adopt your monster. Then you know that you can start going out, seeing what there is, seeing what you like. So maybe testing it out yourselves to see what's going to work and get along with all the other monsters that you have. And that's all the questions that we have. So we've got 5 minutes left. So if anybody wants to come off mute and ask a question live, or you want to put it on there, I'm just going to hang around here for a second and see what happens.
Emma, thank you very much. Yeah, I've been all your presentations identifying monsters, so I have a lot of things to do. I will go back to you with a lot of questions for sure. Cool. Thank you very much. If anyone has any questions, please pull them up so she can answer. If not, as she says, you can contact her later. Quick announcement, what you think? We have now in 5 minutes starting parallel sessions, and at 6:30 CEST time, we will have a roundtable about our research SIG, our interest group. So please join us. It will be interesting. We have energies and sustainability MDPI editors there, so it will be interesting. And that's all. Thank you, Emma, for having me here.
Thank you for having me, and I will be logged on to the Wover platform that the guys are using for the Congress, so I will be checking in on there. So if there are any questions, do feel free to use that platform as well. I will be around.
Okay, see you then.
Thank you.
Bye.